Hello, everybody. It's Giovanna Sessinot here from the Morphbag. Welcome to our Instagram Live. It's Wellness Wednesdays. We're doing Wellness Wednesdays because we are a sustainable lifestyle brand. And so we take this opportunity to introduce to our community ways to improve our lifestyle and also to introduce other brands who share our values and ethos. Today I will have with me Marilyne Kekeli from a beautiful, exquisite, sustainable jewelry brand called Mamatar. Let me see if she is ready to join. Let me check. Second. Come on. No, she is not there yet. Anyway, while we wait for her to join us, oopsie. Here, my whole construction is wobbly. So we had a yoga class last week. I don't know whether you had a chance to participate. Anyway, we will post everything in our profile. Will be a link to the website and also on our YouTube channel, the Morphbag, and equally on Vimeo. So let's see if she is ready. View, go live. See, she there yet? Yes.
Hello.
Hi, Marilyne.
Hi. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you on this sunny day?
I'm good. So I apologize in advance. So there is some drilling happening in the building next door. So
Okay.
it may create some, kind of problems, but let's carry on.
Let's carry on. Yes, and you know what? I apologize in advance. I've got two little dogs, and if the doorbell would ring, they would start barking like crazy. So that could happen too. But this is a live. It's spontaneous, so we don't have to worry about that. Thank you so much for joining me today
Thank you.
and taking your time.
Thank you.
I am really excited to speak to you. You have some exquisite pieces in, not some, all of them actually, in your collection. And so will you be so kind and introduce yourself and tell me and the Morphbag community a little bit about your brand. And what I'm particularly interested in is what was your moment that instigated the wish to change and to create, first of all, jewelry, and secondly, to make it sustainable and ethical.
So my name is Marilyne Kekeli. So I actually started my career in banking, of all places. So I used to work in. Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I started my career in France, and then I moved to the UK, in the mid 2000s. And I used to work in strategy for a number of and in consulting for a number of kind of financial services companies. I think it was really interesting. So I had I guess my morph moment was in 2018. So I had for, I think, I was getting to that stage where, a career perspective, you start to think about, what's coming up next, what are you going to do, and so on. And I'm someone who's really focused about, kind of self-learning, self-development is really important for me. And I've always been interested by creativity. I've always been involved in the arts. I've got a number of my friends who are artists and so on. So I knew that I to explore the more artistic side of me, kind of in the second career and so on. So I kind of decided that, I was actually going to explore that. So I took a sabbatical, kind of left banking and everything. Felt really odd. I think
Yeah.
first few days I was generally like, oh my God, where's my spreadsheet?
Yes, I know that feeling, but it's also liberating, isn't it?
It did. Actually, before it becomes liberating, it was scary. And I'm not going to hide that. It was terrifying. I think, especially, so I'm someone I plan ahead of time. I'm very keen to kind of, really decide what I'm going to do next. I'm really kind of focused on the future. This time I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know anything about jewelry. I actually came to jewelry because I've always been really big into buying jewelry. So when I would do presentations and so on, I was always very focused on that. So it was like the one thing that I always had that was quite exceptional about my outfits. So I wanted to kind of explore how it was made, what kind of structure and so on. I didn't know anything about it. So I was just like, I didn't know I could learn. I didn't know where I could learn. I didn't know where I could, find information, because it's a very secretive kind of industry. You don't just like pop around and figure it out. So I decided that actually I was going to go and investigate. So I spent about easily 2 to 3 months just going from one supplier to the next and saying, what is this? What does this work? Where can I find it? And so on. And I literally just self-taught myself. And then I obviously kind of trained and so on to kind of learn design, and specifically design when it comes to jewelry, which is quite different to other accessories. And that's how it really, the rest is history. So yeah, that was 3 years ago. Reinvention on that end. So yeah.
That sounds wonderful. And sustainable brand, why particularly ethical and sustainable?
Sure. So I think, so the one golden thread, probably, throughout, from a personal perspective is, I am someone who's really, I think core values is really fairness. And I'm also someone who, I kind of like to delve into deep waters. So I like to, when I embrace a topic, I like to understand it in depth. So actually, when I started exploring jewelry, one thing I started reading a lot about was actually where the materials are coming from, and actually the impact it has on people's lives, and the disparity you have between obviously the actual extraction and the mining side, and then the retail side. Because essentially you're looking at you're looking at things that are bought for very cheaply, sold off at such a high cost for customers. And I think the curious side of me, I think, the side of me that's kind of like that I was using in my previous career, was really interested in digging a bit deeper. So I was like, why is this such a high, kind of this discrepancy? Why are people not taking more of the profit to kind of live, fair lives? I think the second part of it was, why are customers being charged so much money for something that actually could be, kind of priced a bit more fairly? That was really important for me. So I wanted to offer products that actually were fairly priced, as well as products that were fairly, kind of bought or kind of sourced. So those two tensions were really important for me. So I won't be able to say that I've completely solved that equation, because you're still dwelling. This is just
work in process, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think particularly because, contrary to probably the rest of fashion, I think, I don't think anyone will accuse me kind of saying this, but jewelry is really behind. Where you have conversations about clothing and so on, like sustainable clothing at scale in the fashion space, when it comes to jewelry, just starting the conversation. And I think it's particularly challenging because it's an industry that's still quite unequal, quite strongly unequal. There's this kind of famous thing that you say in jewelry, which is the majority of customers are women, but the majority of decision makers are men in the industry. And the majority of people who have access to funding or can kind of finance things are essentially men. So you've got that complete asymmetry that you have in the sector. So it's not as diverse as people would assume. So there's still lots of work to be done in order to kind of bring about that balance, kind of in that space. But I find it fascinating personally. I think, there's definitely a space for, brands who actually want to explore these topics and who actually want to do that, and actually do it genuinely, not greenwashing. That's really important. And I think, for me, there's a space for us to kind of do that, and there's a conversation that needs to be started, and what is really important is for customers to support the work that we do as well.
Yes, it is when you run a sustainable business and you try to source the materials in a sustainable manner and ethically, it does add complications to the way you run your business. It's so much. I can't say it's easy to run a business in general, but when you try to make it sustainable, you make it really difficult to yourself, because the ultimate goal is not the profit. I mean, obviously we do need to make profit, but it is the values that we're pursuing. And and the cause, right? It's the cause to not create any further damage in the fashion industry that is already being created. And that is quite challenging. I found it really challenging in running my own business in that respect.
Yeah, no, same here. Yeah.
And also the being careful not to greenwash, to be as transparent as need be, because that's the absolute key.
Yep.
So your materials. So I had a look at your beautiful jewelry. What materials you use, and where do you source them?
Sure, absolutely. So so specifically, so when I started actually, so let me tell you a little story. So when I started actually, I realized that the one thing in jewelry is if you're buying, for example, jewelry that has stones, any stones, so whether they're semi or kind of precious stones, with a few exceptions. So unless you go into very high-end jewelry, traceability is impossible. Because, for example, if you take lapis lazuli, which is this beautiful blue stone,
Blue,
that,
love them.
absolutely stunning. It's primarily mined in Afghanistan, which is kind of a country that has rich kind of sources of it. But how are you going to source it? How are you going to trace it? Because typically it's mined in a small mine somewhere in a mountain. And the person essentially taking it in a small bag, taking it to the market, selling it to this trader, who's selling it to another trader, who's selling it to another trader, and then all the way to multiple layers of traders, and then one day you are in London or you're in Paris and you're in Germany and in Berlin, and then you speak to your supplier and he's got this thing that arrived on your table and he's talking to you about it. So when you ask them the question, he can tell you the person from which you bought it, but then he can't tell you who that person bought it from and who that person bought it from and who that person bought it from. And it's particularly compounded in jewelry because it's small. So actually you can sneak it into a bag when you're flying somewhere. It's very easy to kind of, change hands. It doesn't have anything that enables you to know its age with the naked eye. So there's
Yes.
so many ways for which you can. I think that's probably the difference with, for example, fashion when it comes to fabrics.
Yeah, you make my thing sound much more easy than yours.
Absolutely. With leather, you can trace to the cow that's been used. There's also sort of with fabric, you can kind of figure out which factory it was made at. But for stones, how are you going to know? How are you going to know this was mined by this person somewhere? So very, very difficult to kind of source that. So that was my challenge initially. So I was like, okay, I want to work with semi-precious stones, but that's not going to be possible. So what I decided to do instead is to work primarily with metals. So my collection is
Oh, sorry, can you say that again?
So it's metals, so essentially silver, sterling silver,
Okay.
stainless steel, gold, and specifically. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And from a decoration perspective, I've decided to work primarily with enamel because you can trace it, you can identify where it's coming from, you can actually make the material yourself. So and I also work with biodegradable materials like resins and so on from trees and so on. So those things are, for the resins, for example, you can identify where it's coming from because you're a supplier. You can actually see where the farm is, so you can identify it. But it's so difficult. And metals are the only thing that you can at least trace a little bit because the supply chain behind it is a bit more specific. So that's why I chose not to use stones, actually. But the challenge from a metals perspective is actually, basic way China, and that's where there's still a gap in the industry. And even, I work with fair trade gold, and even fair trade gold, you still have questions around, fair trade gold comes from fair trade mines.
Yes.
Those are not which have the certification, but are not everybody goes every day to see the conditions on a daily basis every single day. You can't do that, right? So have the certification because someone came and checked, but then once that person leaves, what happens? So it's going to be a journey. So that's why I say that it's a journey because I can't guarantee that 100% everything has been checked and 100% everything is done properly. So yeah.
Yes. Well, I don't know whether you know Roberta Stalny. She's a sustainable stylist, and she runs the Ethical Brand Factory. And she once said to me that sustainability is not a final destination; it's a journey.
Yes.
So, and this is what is so important that people understand that even as a consumer, nobody asks us as consumers, because we're all also consumers, to do everything right. It's just the bad thing would be not to do anything. It's just we need to pick and choose what we can actually contribute to this climate change problem in our own little ways. But what I'm interested in as well, because I'm a creative director too, and I take my inspirations from women's needs, right? Needs. So I picked a profile of a certain woman, and then I think hard. So how can I solve her problems in terms of styling and practicality? And this is the source, let's say, of what feeds my creativity for the bags. Now I only have the morph bag out. I'm just working on the new collection, but this is basically the principle I base the creativity on. What about you? So what is your inspirations when you make your exquisite jewelry pieces?
Sure, thank you. So I think I started, the very source of my inspiration originally was a woman who needs essentially, kind of classic. I always kind of say my jewelry is like a suit. So in the way, someone would say, I've got, this important presentation that I'm going to, and I need, this three-piece suit that I'm going to buy and invest in, but that's going to stand the test of time. That's kind of what I want my jewelry to be. So I want the person who buys my jewelry to actually wear it forever. I want them to actually feel like this is something that's a signature item that enhances their outfit, their look, really kind of add that little thing that makes all the difference. So,
je ne sais quoi.
Exactly. Yeah, je ne sais quoi. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's really my inspiration. So when I look at a design, I always try to challenge myself to actually push it as, make it as distinctive and as unusual as possible. So without being something that is odd. So it's almost a kind of, kind of pushing the boundary so that it's sufficiently distinctive that the person feels like, oh, this would definitely add something to my outfit. But not so much that it falls into the kind of like it's a bit odd or it's a bit strange and so on. So that's kind of how I challenge myself into doing that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, so that's in a nutshell. So then I'm inspired by many things. My first collection, I was actually looking at, kind of old images, kind of in terms of art from West Africa, which is, I'm originally from Togo, which is on the West African coast. So I was looking at arts, kind of region in terms of the colors and the inspiration and so on.
Lovely.
And actually, yeah, so that's kind of, I'm working at the moment on my Christmas collection. And actually, I'm looking more at things like links and connections and so on, and an interpretation of that in jewelry. So yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, I'm excited to see that. Do you have a favorite piece?
So,
do you have a favorite item in your collection, past or current?
I didn't used to have any. I used to say, oh, well, if I'm not happy about something, I won't actually release it. But now actually I'm working on some rings and I actually really love them. So, I haven't launched them yet, but I'm kind of like, I think probably out of everything I've done, those rings are probably the ones that I'm the most excited about. So yeah, so I actually really like everything I make. I wear them myself. So it's not,
okay.
not anything out that I wouldn't wear myself. Actually, that's another test. Would I wear this? And if I don't, then I don't really say. But I'm really excited about the rings which are coming out. They're really
right. So I need to hold my breath. We all need to hold our breath to see what you've got in store. Exciting. So when are you going to launch the new collection?
Yes. So
do you have a date?
Be working on sampling. So I'll move into production from August. And I'll start releasing it from September. So that'll be kind of new collection from September onward, and it would be essentially for the Christmas period. So I'm exciting about the rings. Perfect. There'll be lots of rings. So and each one of them will be quite distinctive and unique. So yeah, so looking forward to that.
Sounds great. So from what you've been saying so far, is it right if I assume that you don't follow any fashion trends?
No, I don't. No, absolutely none. No. I think probably the centrality is probably shapes. So I love architecture. I love kind of art design and so on and lines. So I think the common thread is actually shapes and lines. So it's probably the one thing you can see. But otherwise, no. It's funny because I often get asked, "Oh, what are the latest trends that we should be following?" And I'm always like, "My goodness, I need to be aware." I actually don't really follow in terms of colors and so on, because for me, actually, it's back to the idea of sustainability. Because for me, trends is actually something that gets introduced to drive consumption. So for me, it's almost a case of, I'm trying to get the customer to buy something that they're gonna wear, as I said, forever.
Yes. Yeah, same principle with the Morphbag. Yeah. Yeah, that's very important because you see, I always say that there is no point in concentrating on sustainable production if we then bring out constantly new products and try to get them resold to the customers we've got on the mailing list. And this is where, we go back to the point that I was making, that it's so much more difficult running a sustainable business because you keep all these things in mind.
Absolutely.
So for me, every collection will be addressed to a particular profile of individual, and their possible needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting because I was thinking about it the other day, because the reason why your question actually just made me think about it. So the reason why obviously trends are also to, yes, in part is to kind of, do new things, but it's also to drive consumption. And, in a way, a business has to sell, otherwise it will die, right? So that's perfectly normal. But I think there's also another element, which is that if you have a sustainable business, you have to think about actually broadening your audience. So it's less about probably selling more things to the same group of people and more about selling maybe the same things or similar things to a broader audience. And if you really think in that way, then actually you're constantly, it's okay if this person only bought the same ring, or if you have keep a similar for a while, because you're actually focusing on audience growth rather than focusing on selling over and over, like, new things to the same person. So I think that's kind of how I see it. So I'm always kind of hungry for discovering new places, being in new kind of publications, reaching a new market, because I know that my jewelry by most people. The people who've seen it have seen it, and it's the ones who've bought it have bought it. But there's plenty of other people out there who haven't. So I'm actually interested in that growth rather than in selling the same person 50 pieces of earrings in a year. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I totally share these values. Absolutely.
Yeah, no.
But your collections have been worn by some high-profile people in the States, I heard.
Yes, recently I've had a lot of success. Yes. So yeah, no,
You're welcome to gush on live about that.
Yeah, no, I was very excited. I think the best thing was Sunday actually. Last week I was tagged into into an image, and I was just like, what is that image? I didn't understand. I was just like, oh, okay. And then and Sunday I saw the cover page of You magazine, which is a Daily Mail's lifestyle publication. So and it's Sarah Vine, which is the wife of Michael Gove, the UK Minister for the Cabinet Office, who was wearing my jewelry on the cover.
Fantastic.
Very excited.
Congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you. Very, very excited about that. So yeah, and last month I was married to Jay on The Guardian, also wearing kind of one of my necklaces actually. So yeah, part of the England rugby team. So yeah, so there's lots of like visibility that's happening all of a sudden. And actually it's funny because I have to apologize for maybe going on my website right now, but I've had to put statements everywhere that's I'm kind of out on a number of pieces, so I'm kind of trying to work in the background to bring everything back in stock. But yeah, but I'm really excited about it. So I think looking ahead of the year, I'm really going to focus on. So you're going to see lots of things that I'm kind of doing. I'm evolving. I'm going to start actually introducing some pieces in fine jewelry, so kind of more in kind of gold and silver and so on. So I'm actually going to continue to offer the core of my collection, which is really focusing on offering product at affordable prices for everyone. But I'll also be on a capsule basis, kind of exploring fine jewelry as well, which is also very exciting actually to do. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And we can all admire these beautiful pieces on your store online, right?
Yes. So on my website, which is Mamater, so MAMATER.com, and on my Instagram, which is Mamater Jewels, which is MAMATER Jewels. So yeah, so on Instagram, there we go. That's why I am.
Fantastic. Yeah, I look forward when the lockdown has completely eased to be able to do pop-up again.
Yes, absolutely, totally.
It's nice. I miss the contact with the customers, direct customers. Yeah,
absolutely, definitely. So yeah, how have you found it? How have things been on your end? How have you seen the past few months and so on? So how was it for you?
yeah, it's been okay. I mean, obviously, I do make the contact with customers, which I only get on a chat, and I also have a virtual shop, so people can book an appointment.
Yeah.
And then we have a stylist conversation, basically, to find the right color way for the individual customers. So I've been having contact like that on Zooms or on the phone, on WhatsApp, which has been nice, but it's not the same thing as being in a show, in an event or a pop-up. So I am looking forward to opening up. Yeah, so yeah, my pieces, I'm working on the new collection, and hopefully it's going to be ready for Q4, so September, like yours. And I will display them at Wolf and Badger in London and New York.
Yes.
So that's quite exciting. Yes.
No,
so I won't be present in store, but they will be there, so people can go in touch and feel them, which is great. So. Yeah, now we know what we were missing, what we had. We started to appreciate what we had pre-pandemic.
Absolutely.
Right, we took all these things for granted, but they are quite special. So now, we go back to the basics and appreciate normality more. So it's good in that respect.
100%.
Look, thank you so much for having taken the time. There was no drilling. You see, no drilling.
It actually stopped just before I joined, so I was just like crossing my fingers, thinking to Becky and my team.
They must have gone on a lunch break.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think it's actually lunch break, so that's probably why they are kind of stopping. But yeah, so apologies. Earlier, I was kind of mentioning.
No, I didn't hear. You hear my dogs, by the way? Did you hear the bell on my end and the dogs?
Oh no,
you didn't hear it? Oh no, brilliant. I thought, come on. I didn't even apologize. That might happen, and it happened to me. Great. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And have a lovely afternoon. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you. You too. Have a lovely
and
week.
Best of success.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Bye.